Hello and welcome to another example of the short answer questions for APUS history. Today we're going to be tackling a question from period 2 about religion and colonization. And this was the short answer question given in 2018. It was the third question. So just quick reviews here. The short answer question is the second part of the AP exam, and you'll be required to write 3 out of the 4, and they cover different time periods. So period 2, the only question that could potentially cover period 2 is question 3. For more about overall SAQ, check out my other video on how to write SAQs. But for now, we're going to move on with some of just the broad understandings you have to know when writing your answers. First is to make sure you understand that each point is earned on its own. So you could very well earn points B and C and miss point A. You don't have to earn them subsequently. And the biggest issue I see students doing is not describing. So they might actually have the evidence, but they don't describe it enough to then prove they know what the term means. Top 3 writing tips. Use evidence and explain it. You can answer the questions in any order, so do the ones that you know first, and then be direct, really 2 to 4 sentences. And I find in comparison prompts like the one we're going to do today, three sentences really is a sweet spot. Other suggestions, it doesn't matter if you label, the readers know it's a first draft. Don't worry about topic sentences or thesis statements, but make sure you're not doing bullet points, and try to answer all parts of the question. Okay, so notes about period 2 on the exam. It's only going to be 6 to 8% of the total exam. And as I mentioned earlier, only short answer question 3, which is optional, could potentially cover period 2. However, the College Board typically has given a short answer question on period 2 in most of the previous exams. So this prompt is going to address learning objective B, which is comparing various European colonies and also describing the effects of the development of those colonies. So here is your prompt. Part A, briefly describe one specific historical difference between the role of religion in Spanish colonization and in the colonization of New England. And briefly describe one specific historical similarity between the role of religion in those two regions, and how Part C, explain one specific historical effect of religion on one or the other region. So first of all, if you don't remember the content, please don't move forward. Please go check out the 2 videos I have above, the cultural interactions. That's going to talk about the Spanish colonization, religion in the Spanish colonization, or go check out my video on the British colonies. But if you feel confident with the content, let's move forward to just a couple tips about comparison prompts. In most of your answers, unless it really only states that you need to address one region, you need to address both aspects of the prompts. That's going to make sure that you are actually comparing or contrasting. So these responses will likely be longer. 3 sentences is likely going to be your minimum. And your format should be, your first sentence is to state what that similarity or difference or the reason is, and then provide the explanation for the first one, and then the explanation for the second. And it's best if you have specific evidence for both aspects of the prompt. So now go ahead and pause the video and try to actually answer the prompt. That's going to be the best way to go through this video, is to actually practice writing this prompt so that then you can see whether you would have passed it or not. So go ahead and pause and then we'll come back. Now go ahead and check your answers. Do you have specific evidence for parts A, B, and C? Did you explain it? Did you fully answer the question? And if you labeled, are the labels actually correct? So now I'm going to take you through what the rubric states and give you a sample response. So for the first part, which is a difference, there are quite a variety of responses you could have had here to describe how religion played a role. Now, what I have found for a lot of students when they answer this question is they actually forget the religious part. They describe a difference between Spanish colonization and New England colonization, but they forget that it needs to be centered on religion. So if you need to pause and check over these answers, go ahead, but I'm going to give you a sample response here. While both the Spanish and the Puritans in New England had religious motivations for colonization, their primary goal differed. The Spanish were more interested in converting American Indians to Catholicism, and the Puritans lived separately from American Indians and practiced Protestantism. So I actually included two differences here, the Catholicism versus Protestantism. So that's one difference. And then also the fact that the Spanish were more interested in converting while the Puritans wanted to live separately. So I did a little bit more here than necessary, but if you have time, it doesn't hurt to do that. Let's say one of those things was wrong. Let's say I said Catholicism for the Puritans. My other answer would have been enough to still get the point. So if you have more and if you have time, it does not hurt to include it. Okay, part B is about the historical similarities. So here are some of your options. And again, it doesn't have to be what's on here, but here are some options of what you could have written about. Here's a sample. In both the Spanish Empire and British New England, Europeans used Christianity as a justification for the subjugation and persecution of American Indians. The Spanish, through the encomienda system, were to convert American Indians in exchange for free labor. The Puritans executed some Wampanoags for their failure to adhere to Protestant cultural expectations. So as you can see, I really followed the format that I described earlier, where here I have what the similarity is, and then I described how it was evidenced in the Spanish colonies and how it was evidenced in New England. All right, and then last, for part C, you were supposed to provide historical evidence for one of the regions. So here are some options for both regions, and here is my sample. I chose to focus on the Puritans in New England. Puritan intolerance toward divergent religious ideas and principles led to the founding of other British colonies. Rhode Island was founded by Puritan dissenter Roger Williams, who had been banished from Massachusetts. Pennsylvania was founded by Quakers who were persecuted by the Puritans. So once again, I had enough time where I provided two examples just to ensure that if one was wrong, I could still get the point. So here's another sample for you where I'd like for you to pause, read it over, and determine what score you think this student would have received. And now here are the scoring notes. The response that you just read did earn a 3. It earned all 3 points because it hit the rubric. And honestly, it's not the best thing that you've ever read in your life, but it did just enough to get the point for each. So your teacher may be a little more strict throughout the year, but honestly, on the AP exam, if you can include specific evidence and explain it, it can, that's all you need to do. So overall, how did students do on this question? There was an average score of 1.39 out of 3 points. So not super high here, but also not the lowest short answer question ever. And here the College Board then described what students were supposed to do and what content it addressed. So you can see that it's talking about the skills of causation and comparison, and students, were to describe those aspects with the question. But here's the part that I think is really interesting. On this question, they asked the chief reader, what advice would you offer to teachers to help students improve their performance? And one of the things that the chief reader really highlighted was the importance of geography, that students really struggle to remember the regions and what colonies were included in New England. And so students really on the AP exam struggled with that. So if you're using this as a review, make sure that you have some key notes here to look back on before your AP exam to make sure you highlight what the regions or which colonies were in each region. So that's all. I hope that was helpful for you. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and stay tuned for another writing prompt.